Okay, so let's continue with our discussion. So it's still on functions and graphs. But this time we'll be dealing with the operations on functions, and we're going to determine if it's an odd or an even function. So first is we go to the different operations of your function. So probably this is just super basic, but I think once we go to the examples, I think it will be difficult to comprehend if um, there are a lot of equations going on, especially when we are dealing with radicals. So radicals kanang mga square roots. So aside from that, also um, simplification of equations such as the distribution of the signs. So I think those are just the common mistakes that students make. Okay, so functions can be formed by adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing the functions. So for example, you have two different functions. Let's say you have f is the first function, and then you have g as another function. So meaning you have f, let's say any type of equation, and then g is another equation aside, diba? So to find for the sum, so usually you have this designation f plus g. So usually you can call this one as f plus g of x. So I mean f plus g of x function. So that's how you read it. So in simpler terms, you can just say, or you can just have it as the equation of the function of x plus the equation of the function of g. So probably it's super basic. You just add the two equations being presented on your problem. Diretso ra siya, diretso ra. So same goes for the difference. So you just have to subtract the two equations. So equation 1 minus equation 2, equation coming from f minus the equation coming from g. So again, you read this as f minus g of x. F minus g of x. And again, this is the function of x minus the g of x. So f of x, g of x. So product, so the same. So you just have to multiply. So basic operations. And division is you divide the first by the second. So of course, it will depend on the, the problem being presented. So it may be that you are going to input first the g function and then divide it by the f, or the other way around. It could also be g times f. So again, it will depend on the problem. So in the quotient operation, so we just have to take note that the denominator must not be equal to 0. So why is that? Because again, any number divided by 0 is undefined. Diba? For it not to be undefined. So again, what we call this one as the domain, diba? Domain of the g of x. So again, as per previous discussion, domains are the input values of x. Input values. So it is stating that we have to avoid the value of 0. So that's the condition for the domain. So again, the output of your domain would be the range. Okay, so let's have an example, and let's have a difficult example immediately. So we have two functions again, f and g functions. So the f function, the f of x, is equal to the square root of x plus 1. So this is our first equation being represented by the function of x. Next is our g of x, which is the square root of x minus 4. So determine the following functions. So I'm rather define and then determine the domain. So meaning the input value. So again, what we have learned last meeting. So we're going to look if those values are possible or not. So first is this one. So f plus g. So again, you just have to add the first and the second equation because the first equation is the f function. The second equation is the g function. So by adding, you just have to, so x plus 1 and then plus the square root of x minus 4. Okay, so by getting the range, so we can say that for us to avoid imaginary numbers, so we have to avoid may mo siyang negative value, di ba? So it can be 0, but as long as it's not negative. So for the first radical expression, the value of x cannot be equal to ng negative kuan, di ba? Less than 1, di ba? So same goes for the other expression. So we cannot say that the value of x here must be less than 4. So it should be greater or equal to 4. Now, since 4 is greater than 1, so we cannot say that our domain is x should be greater than 1, di ba? Kay if, let's say we're going to start with this with 1, or let's say with negative 1, so the second term would be negative, di ba? And it will result you in giving an imaginary expression. So meaning for us to be able to satisfy the conditions of the equation, so we are going to be maagad ta sa second term, which is x minus 4. So again, if we have negative values inside the square root functions or any radical kanamang radical expressions, so those are the square root functions. So radical expressions that I'm talking about is those are the mga inana na mga terms, mga square root. So to the nth power, so it could be square root, it could be cube root, and a fourth root. So again, we don't want any negative values because these are imaginary numbers. So we try to avoid this type of scenario. So again, if we're going to let x be equal to let's say negative 2, okay, di ba mo man siyang maka-imaginary sa first term. So probably if we're going to do that on the second term, so it will give also it will also give a negative answer. So might as well mag-agad ta sa second term kay para if x value is large, so the first term won't be imaginary, di ba? So meaning we start with 4 because again, we can have a zero term inside the radical expression, but not a negative term, di ba? As what I have mentioned earlier. So again, we can have it as 4, but we can also have a 5, di ba? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, okay, the second term won't be negative anymore. So meaning our domain is x is greater than 4 or equal to 4. So this is the domain. Or you may present it in this manner in interval annotation. So it could also be expressed in this manner. Close bracket 4, meaning 4 is included, going towards going towards positive infinity. And it's a parenthesis because it's limitless. So marag libog no kay kuan. Sige lang, we'll be having another example later. So next is f minus g na pod. So just reverse the operation. Then minus x minus 4. So the same condition. So this is still x is greater or equal to 4. So next is multiplication. So multiply the square root of x minus 1. Then multiply the square root of x minus 4. So again, condition is still the same. X is greater than 4. This is plus die. Then lastly is the division part. So usually we express it as fractions for division. So this is the square root of x plus 1 divided by the square root of x minus 4. So again, as mentioned earlier, the denominator cannot be equal to 0. So as long as it's not 0, so pwede siya any number, di ba? Basta as long as it's not also an imaginary number. So instead of having x greater than 4 or equal to 4, so we won't be including 4 here because if we put 4 as the value of x in the denominator, it's going to be 0, di ba? 4 minus 4 is equal to 0. Then square root of 0 is still 0. So meaning our domain here is x is greater than 4 only. Okay? So did you get it? So questions or clarifications? So murakana na siya. So you just have to I think for the domain part is that you're going to have to imagine the different values of x that you need to input para ma-valid ang inyong equation. And also to think or to avoid values of x that will make the equation invalid, such as having imaginary numbers, or let's say basta ka naging mo math error. I think the other term for this one, if kanang ma-invalid in your equation, is when you try this in your calculator, the calculator will tell you as an invalid or math error ang iyang gawa sa calculator. So we try to avoid those input parameters, kanang domain ng mga values. All right. So I think if you don't have any questions, so we can proceed to the next slide. So another type of operation would be the composite function. So meaning we're going to have two types of function, but the other function will be incorporated to the other one, or vice versa. So the domain of such function will be will be the set of all x in the domain of G in the domain of F also. So most likely composite functions are presented in this manner. Ano, yan ng mga symbols. So di siya multiplication but it's an open dot. So usually basta multiplication kay para man na siya ganang solid dot, diba? So if it's open dot, that is what we call as the composite function, meaning the next function will be incorporated to the first function. So when you try to read this will be the f of g of x, the f of g of x function. So other books present it also in this manner. So that's why you have f of g of x. So usually the parenthesis will be the of term. So f of g, f function of g function of x, x. So you you may present it in this manner. You may also present it in this manner. So if you try to review this one later, so I think different resources will be going to have different ways of presenting the composite function. So with all the words here, so um, I think you'll be able to appreciate it more if we go to the example. Okay, so you're going to have the f of f and g of g, f of g, and g of f. So the f of x function is equal to the square root of x. The g of x function will be equal to x squared minus 1. So let's try to answer the letter A. I'm sorry. So letter A first. So letter A would be the f of f. So meaning in in other terms, that would be f of x. So f of x will be, again, if you're going to incorporate f inside the f function. So for example, this is the f function, square root of x. So meaning we're going to incorporate f of x inside the square root of x, diba? So the correct answer would be, so marag mahog siya nga inyong isud ang value of x sa kaning given equation. Okay, so excuse ha. Okay, so again, going back, so again, the function of x. So let's try another color lang sa for you to be able to understand. Okay, so the function of x is this one, diba? Equals square root of x. So again, since since the function of x will be the function of x again, di ba sa atong previous meeting, di ba, if for example, we have this function here. Function of x is equal to x squared, di ba? And then we determined it, but we determined it if if the function of x is equal to 3, di ba? Na a specific value. So we're going to replace it with the 3 value, di ba? So this will give us 3 squared, and then the function of x with respect to 3, na having a 3 value would be 9, di ba? So ana ra po siya nga concept. So you're since you are having double functions of f, so meaning we're going to replace this one with another square root of x. Okay, since we're going to have the function of x, f of x. So marinana siya nga kon. Okay, so going back, so our function of f would be first the square root of x. So again, the square root of x, then we place it again here, the square root of x. So you're going to have double square root of x. So inana siya. And simplifying even further, so by exponential rule, so you can change this one into its exponent annotation or format. So square root is to the power of 1/2, right? So x to the power of 1/2, and then to the power of 1/2. So basic power to power rule. So this will give us x to the power of 1/4. So the final answer is that the function of f with respect to x is equal to the 4th root of x. So that's the answer. So questions? So murag lisod ba no? So let's try kanang another one aside kaning B. Okay, para inyo makita dyan ang difference. Sige na, kanalayan na sa na color para makuha na letter B. So we're going to have the g of x. So again, since this one is our g of x, which is equal to x squared minus 1. So since our g of x is equal to x squared minus 1, and then since again, we're going to incorporate another g of x inside the g of x function. So meaning we have to input g of x here, x squared minus 1. So meaning our new term here would be x squared minus 1 squared, diba? Okay, this is what happened. We incorporated another g of x inside your g of x. So we only replace the x variables and then minus 1. So we have to simplify this one. So it's going to be, so expanding this one. So you have x to the power 4 minus 2x squared plus 1. And then minus 1. So expanding even further by removing the parenthesis, x to the 4th minus 2x squared plus 1 minus 1. So minus 1 plus 1 is equal to 0. So it cancels each other out. So the final answer would be the g of x is equal to x to the power 4 minus 2x squared. So marag-ana ra siya pag-answer dyan. So sige lain na sad kanina sang letter C para inyo yung fully appreciate ang kaning kaning topic kaning composite functions. So this time is we're going to have the f of g of x. Oh, sorry. So this time is our f of x. Let's try another lighter color para ma-differentiate siya. So f of g of x. So again, our f of x is equivalent to the square root of x. Now our g of x would be equal to x squared minus 1. So since it's the f of g of x, so the second term is always the term that you will replace to the first term. So again, our g of x is equal to x squared minus 1. So again, since it's f of g of x, again the second term will be the term that you are going to input or replace to the first function. So in this case, the g of x is the second function. So we have to plug in x squared towards the x value on the first function. So meaning our function becomes like this. So square root, and then input the second function to the first function, x squared minus 1. And then I think you cannot further simplify this one. So that's the final answer. So the final answer would be the function of f of g of x is equal to the square root of x squared minus 1. So maragana na dyan na siya. Okay, so let's try the last example. So let's try to write it on the left side. So g of f of x. So again, our g of f. So let's try to write first the two terms so that we can fully understand. So g of x is equal to x squared minus 1. And then our f of x is equal to the square root of x. So again, the second term, diba? G, the first term, second is f, g of f of x. So the second term, you have to incorporate it in the x of the first function. So it's going to look like this. So instead of x squared, so since we'll be plugging in the equation of the second function, so it's going to be the square root of x squared minus 1. Square root squared, so it cancels it cancels the square root. So the final answer would be equal to the g of f of x. So again, it cancels the square root is equal to x minus 1. So of course, don't forget to box your final answer so that we can so it's I think for it's easy for me to check also your answers. So marang ana siya. So para ma-properly state siya, so let's try to erase this one first. Then g of x again is x squared minus 1. Anaguro. And then again, the second term first. Ana, di ba? So same for the first one. Para parehag format or parehag presentation sa solution. Okay, so far, do you have questions? Okay, Michael. Hello, Michael.
Oh, I thought I unmuted, sir. So, sir, sa C, sir ba, pwede possible answer is x minus square root of negative 1 or something, sir? Or the pwede, or module ng final answer, sir?
Mo na siya ang final answer. So,
So, dili siya ma-crash out lang like ang squared, sir, of square
okay.
root, sir.
If you have a binomial term, so usually it's considered as one expression do siya. So, for example, you're going to have this one. So, x squared. So, pwede ra siya because you're only having one term, di ba? So, that's going to be x. So, pwede siya ma-square root. But for this case, so, dili siya pwede kuan because you're going to have two individual kuan kanang square root, di ba? And x squared minus 1 is murag pair man sila. So you cannot leave the minus 1 behind. Kanang negative 1. So unless siguro it's for example, you're going to have this one x squared minus 1 and then squared siguro ana, di ba? So pwede siya.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Basta kuan siya. Basta I think the whole expression would be in square function in to the power siya of 2. But if only one term is to the power of 2 and then na siya operation, so dili siya pwede ma-square root. So ikuan lang yung it. I think you can try it on the calculator.
Okay, sir. And sir, will there be a possibility with the final answer kay pangitawon pa ng domain, sir? Like that, like kung say domain ana, sir, and all.
Oo, na possibility ana. Pero probably I won't be dealing with it so much man siguro kay murag labad kay sa ang mag look for domain and range. So sige lang
Okay.
once we reach the end of the first half, so we'll be focusing more on the derivatives na katong mga differentiation techniques. And kani siya probably we'll just have to look it back a few things na lang siguro. But we'll be focusing more on the derivatives since that would be more important on the other half of the semester, which is the integrals. Okay, vice versa na integrals sa derivatives. Okay, so if there's no question, so we can proceed to the next slide. If freeze on what it's okay here. So for example, another type of composite function, but this time we're going to incorporate now the different topics that we have learned before. So first is we have to find f of g, and then we're going to plug in a value of 3 later on. So this one is the first equation, f of g, so meaning this is the original equation. The second equation will be the ones that we're going to input in the first equation. And then after plugging it in, we're going to apply the value of 3. Ba? So let's take it step by step. So on the previous slide, so we just stop at replacing or plugging in the 2 function to the 1 function, and then we don't have any value of x na, di ba? So for example, our answers is katorang mga kuan, x to the fourth minus 2x squared. So mga ana ra siya na mga answer. But this time we're going to have a third step because the value of x has a value of 3. So meaning the domain is 3, di ba? The plug-in value is 3. So we're going to have another step. So extra step lang siya in order to find the value of f of g. Okay, so again, let's try to write first. So di na to mag-write lang. Ato lang siyang i-kuan dali. So 1 and then 2. So again, since it's since it's the function of, so let's try to solve first the function of g of x before plugging in the value of 3. So again, incorporate 2 to 1, di ba? So meaning the x value will be replaced by this term here. Okay, para klaro, let's try another color. May nakanindot sa Zoom, di ba, kay naka-colors. So again, the function of x in the first equation will be plugged in or will be inputted by the value of the function of g on the second equation. So goes towards here, di ba? So meaning the x here will be replaced by the function of g of x. Okay, so it's going to look like this. So we're going to have 5 divided by, so instead of x, that will be the g of x now. So that would be 2x plus 1 and then minus 2. So mag-ana siya, di ba? Then simplifying further by removing the parentheses because wala na siya kuan. Other way or other means of simplification. So 2x plus 1 and then minus 2. So 1 minus 2 would be minus 1. So the final answer for f of g of x would be equal to 5 all over 2x minus 1. So this would be our f of g of x. Now the third step is again plugging in a value of 3. So continuing with the equation, so let's try another color na side. Green lang para makita. So this time is we're going to plug in f of g of 3. So again, we're going to plug in 3 to this, di ba? So we're going to, so let me, so this one, f of g of 3. So meaning the 3 value will be replaced in the x parameter. So you're going to have 5 over 2 times 3 minus 1. So ano lang siya, the extra step would be just to replace whatever value the problem is declaring. So on the previous slide, so we only up until here, di ba? The second step. I mean the kaning ko the answer kani siya. But since we have now a value of x that is that the problem is asking. So we're going to replace it with that particular value, which is 3 in this case. So we're going to have 5 over, so 2 times 3 is 6, 6 minus 1, and then 5 over 5. So our final answer would be that the f of g of 3, meaning having a value of 3, the function of f of g of x function having a value of 3 gives us the final answer of 1. So 1 is here. So just be mindful of the kanang handwriting na nakuha kay medyo lisod kay siya sa, sa writing tablet. Okay, so do you have questions? So I think there is none. So we proceed to the next slide. Okay, so next would be the odd and the even functions. So I think this is just an easy topic because we're just going to verify whether the function is odd or even. So in this case, if the presented equation will be replaced by negative x, so I think you have to be very keen here. So again, for us to say that the function is even, so what we need to do is we're going to replace, or we're going to input a value of negative x in the equation. Now, if the resulting equation is the same as the original equation, so if it's the same, so meaning the function is, I mean, so if the same siya ang result, so meaning if you have x squared, diba? And then you plug in negative x, so it's still x squared, diba? So meaning the function is even. Okay, even though we replace it by negative x, the resulting equation is still the same as the original equation. Same as original. Now, for odd functions, if we try to replace negative x, the answer would be a negative operation of the original equation, meaning the operations are reversed. So what if um, the equations are not having a condition of the ones presented here? So it's not the same as original because there are terms that are operation, marag na yung mga terms that the operations are reversed. There are some that are equal or same as the original, but not 100%, diba? So if that's the case, so the function is neither even or odd. So again, if they share the same as the original, so meaning if the operations are reversed, that would be the odd function. If the function is the same as the original upon application of negative x variable, so that would be even. So if the conditions for these two does not meet, so meaning it's neither odd or positive, odd or even. So for us to appreciate this one, so let's try to go to examples. Kani tulo lang kay para. And I think the graphing portion, I'll leave that one to you guys. So you can just try to plot the graph here. So I think for the graph of the even function, the graph graph. So the graph of the even functions are symmetrical. So meaning it's just the mirror image. or it's a mirror image kanang side by side siya, such as the parabola na muna siya mga different types of even functions. Now if odd functions, so it's going to be curvy na, it's going to be up and down na ana siya nga mga graph. So neither um if it's neither, so you have just to combine those two graphs. So it's symmetrical, but the other one is on the opposite side. So murag ana siya ana. Mura siya kanang na kuan. It's like a mirror, but it's just the opposite mirror lang. So I think you can verify this one later once you are able to understand this one. So check your answers by graphing the function. So just try to graph it using Desmos. Desmos. So try to verify it later using Desmos. So again, for us to know that the function is odd or even, so we're going to plug in negative x, diba? So the first one is f of negative x. So you're going to have 3 times negative x to the power of 4 minus 2 times negative x squared plus 7. So negative x to the power of 4. So negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 will give you a resulting positive value of x, diba? So it is still the same, 3x to the power of 4. And then minus negative x squared. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. X squared is still x squared. So this gives us the same value, 2x squared plus 7. So if you try to compare the final answer here against this one, so you can say that the function has not been reversed, diba? The operations has not been reversed. So meaning um, this one is an even function. So therefore, f of x is even function, is an even function. So mura na siya yung button, you just try to replace it with negative x, then if ever the resulting equation is the same as the original one, so that one is even function. So let's try letter B instead. So f of negative x, so you're going to have 3 times negative x to the 5th power minus 4 times x to the negative x, I mean, cube minus 9x. So 9x is negative x, di ba? Okay, so negative x raised to the power of 5 would give you a negative value, di ba? So negative 1 times negative 1. So 2 naka-negative 1s, 1, di ba? Then negative 1 po yung negative, pakita po sa negative 1. And then positive 1 aside and then negative 1 aside. So meaning the first term will give you negative 3x raised to the power of 5. And then the second value is you're going to have a positive 1. So negative 1 cube, then x cube, di ba? So you're going to have positive 4x cubed. Then the last one is positive 9x. So if you try to compare this one again, notice that the operations are reversed, diba? So this one has now a negative, diba? The original is positive. The second term is minus. The second term is plus now. The third term is minus. The third term is now plus. So meaning that all the operations have been reversed. So therefore, we can say that this function is an odd function. So g of x is an odd function. So ano na siya? Then lastly is we go to the third one. So h of negative x is equal to 2 times negative x to the power 4, then plus 7 times negative x cubed minus negative x squared. So the first one is still positive. So 2x to the power of 4. Sorry. Okay, so next is negative x cubed. So this is going to be negative. So minus 7x cubed. And then the other one is still minus x squared. So again, if you try to compare the answer with the original one, so this one is positive, diba? So okay ra. The next term is now negative. Positive, then it became negative operation. The third operation is minus, and then minus gapon. So we notice that there's a change in one of the operations, but not all the operations are changed. So again, it's not wala siya ni-apply sa total condition for even functions. It's not also a condition for odd, diba? Because not all operations were changed. So meaning your final answer would be, since na may na-retain, na po inausab, so your final answer would be h of x is neither odd or even. So muna siya. Okay, so do you have questions or clarifications as far as the discussion na atong ibuhat karon? Okay, so I think there's no question. So I think that would be the end of the lecture, and I'll try to upload the assignments for the topics that we have discussed probably by tonight siguro. Mga a few numbers lang siguro para at least you retain some of the discussions that we have discussed.